Commiserations to the Belarusian Football League, but the Bundesliga is back. Hey, I'm Adriano Quarantino, and welcome to Rabona TV's not quite mid-season preview of the Bundesliga for all of you that will be taking an interest in it for the first time or just need a refresher of where everything stands. So with football coming back, or at least planning to come back in a few countries, if you're one of those who haven't subscribed yet, be sure to do so for all of the coverage that you'll ever need, and maybe I'll make a video suggestion of yours. I tend to do that quite often, like this video that same old Richard suggested on Twitter. All right, let's get going. The last matches that were played in Germany were on the weekend of March 7th, though there was also a midweek fixture shortly after featuring Borussia Mönchengladbach and FC Köln. So as things stand, Bayern Munich has a 4-point lead over Borussia Dortmund. I'm sure you could have taken a 4-year nap and still guessed that the top two would be these usual suspects. However, the top four has been extremely fun to watch. Leipzig, Dortmund, and Borussia Mönchengladbach are all circling around Bayern Munich. Hell, even Leverkusen isn't that far off, but we'll get to them later. And that sort of competitiveness is typically a hallmark of the Bundesliga. It's rare to have such a disparity between the top 3 or 4 and the rest of the league. That's not to say they don't have a runaway leader, as Bayern have been that frequently. But in the past, there's been seasons where just a few points can separate 3rd or 4th from 10th. As you can see here, 10 points separates 5th place Leverkusen from 6th place Schalke. So at the bottom of the table, some truly rotten form from Werder Bremen and Paderborn sees them as the indisputable heavyweight basement boys of the Bundesliga. Each of them are on 6-match winless skids, leaving them in the relegation places while Fortuna Düsseldorf are sitting in the relegation playoff. Their form has been better lately, only 1 loss from their last 6 matches, but man, does form even matter at this point? I don't know. Given the time between matches, it's a new world. I guess that could make the relegation picture and the entire league picture extremely exciting. It's a fresh start. We've seen other teams crawl from the bottom and shoot up the standings this season. We'll get to them later on, but who knows what could happen. Hertha Berlin have had an insane season. Despite the massive amounts of investment in their squad, they haven't done great. Though with 28 points, they seem like they will probably be safe. Augsburg, 5 points above the relegation playoff spot. Augsburg, by the way, they have some great talents. Niederlechner, Richter, and Philipp Max being 3 of the ones to watch. But don't look at Augsburg's recent form, man. It's ugly. Winless in 5, with 4 of those matches being losses. And then there's Mainz, who are looking to put some distance between themselves and Fortuna Düsseldorf, but they have a tough run of fixtures coming up as they're going to face Köln, then RB Leipzig, then Union Berlin. Speaking of form, and FC Köln, they're one of the teams that has had 2 players test positive for COVID and a physio as well. But their turnaround this season has been so enjoyable to watch. They were newly promoted after winning the 2nd Bundesliga, but then they didn't take to the top flight too well. After 14 matches, they were dead last, with just 2 wins to their name. But following that, Markus Gisdol found the magic again, and they've looked a completely different team. Not only have they had some red-hot form, 8 wins and 3 losses, which I know you're probably saying that's not quite red-hot, but it's not bad considering their 2 wins and 2 draws and 10 losses from before. But man, they were scoring for fun. They scored more than 1 goal on only 2 occasions in their first 14 matches, but now 2-0 win over Leverkusen, 4-2 over Frankfurt, 4-0 against Freiburg, 5-0 against Hertha Berlin, 3-0 over Schalke. They're a fun team to watch, solid choice for any neutrals out there that are looking for a combative mid-table team. Just behind them is a fellow promoted side in Union Berlin. They sit in 11th at the moment, and the best part of it is that they are playing in their first Bundesliga season. They made their way into the Bundesliga after finishing in 3rd in the 2nd Bundesliga, and then they defeated Stuttgart in the relegation/promotion playoff. Absolute scenes as the team from the eastern part of Berlin finally reached the promised land. It wasn't really expected that they would achieve it, so you can see how their achievement of 11th so far is made all the more heartwarming. Great support and a great season so far. I mean, Union Berlin is even ahead of Eintracht Frankfurt. Remember their team from the 2018-19 season? They were cleaning up in the latter half of the season, going on an incredible undefeated run, and while they lost 3 of their stars, They were expected to emerge as an upper half mainstay in the table. But they've really struggled this season, despite bringing in some decent talents. Their form is just too hot and cold. In the Bundesliga, when you consider their 3-match losing streak to add to their earlier 7-match winless run from the end of 2019, 12th isn't all that surprising anymore. Now, 6th place in Germany gets you qualification into the Europa League knockout stages, though UEFA may scrap Europa and Champions League qualification stages for next season. But anyways, there's quite the battle going on for 6th place. I mean, I could even include Köln in there, as they are only 5 points back, but the real fight is between Schalke, Wolfsburg, Freiburg, and Hoffenheim. Hoffenheim, of course, lost their talented manager, Julian Nagelsmann, to one of their rivals for this season. And life under their new coach, Alfred Schroeder, has been tough. Now, it doesn't help that they also lost one of their top attackers from last season in Joelinton. Yes, Newcastle fans, Joelinton was actually quality for Hoffenheim last season and has been misused by Steve Bruce at Newcastle. Hoffenheim create chances, but score from few of them, and their 9th place standing falls short of the expectations of the team, the expectations that were built under Nagelsmann. Just ahead of them are Freiburg, a team that was mixing it up with the top boys of the league for the first part of the season, but have since fallen off quite a bit. Since mid-December, they have won just 3 times from 11 matches. And I mean, that's after losing just 3 times in their first 13 matches. They have the unwanted title of being one of the 4 teams that has lost to the basement boys, Paderborn, and they did so at home. That said, on their day, they can be a tough team to break down, just like Wolfsburg, the champions from the 08-09 season that sit in 7th currently. These guys were hanging around the top 4, actually, after 9 match days, undefeated in that time span, but a 10-match run that saw them lose 6 matches dropped them to mid-table, but they have since started to climb their way back up towards the Europa League spots. Weghorst has been great for them in the attack and has ensured that they have kept Schalke in their sights. David Wagner's Schalke, yes, for those joining us from the Premier League, former Huddersfield manager David Wagner bagged a job at one of the top German sides, and he had a great start. Especially the first half of the season, where Schalke was keeping pace with the top 2, most notably defeating RB Leipzig 3-1 away. That was a massive result for them, and a massive blow for an otherwise great season for RB Leipzig. However, despite beating Borussia Mönchengladbach in their first match following the winter break, Schalke's form has well and truly dried up. I mean, that victory over Mönchengladbach, a strong side, was followed up with a 5-0 drubbing at the hands of Bayern Munich. And then the failure to beat any of the bottom half sides in Hertha Berlin, Paderborn, and Mainz. And then another 5-0 drubbing, this time at home against RB Leipzig. And then another terrible match in a 3-0 loss against Köln. It's been tough for Wagner and the boys. Schalke started so well, but maybe this break will have been a blessing in disguise for them, as they're now 10 points back from 5th place Leverkusen. And Leverkusen, their season has been the opposite of that of Schalke, and for me, it sort of mirrored the form of one of their talismanic players, Kai Havertz. Like the 20-year-old, Leverkusen's start to the season was lukewarm, but starting around, I'd say, November, they've really picked things up. They're currently on a 5-match unbeaten run, but since November 10th, they've won 10 matches, drawn twice, and lost 3 times, losing to Hoffenheim, Hertha Berlin, surprisingly, and FC Köln. Köln, baby! What a fun team. But anyways, they had that epic 4-3 victory over Dortmund at the beginning of February, a draw away to Leipzig, a 4-0 win over Frankfurt. Peter Bosz has done an excellent job with his team following his failure at Dortmund. I've definitely been impressed, as he looked, in my opinion, pretty clueless at Dortmund. So, Leverkusen are in 5th, just behind a team close to all of our hearts here at Rabona TV. One of the sweethearts of the weekend recap, and the team I'm doing a career mode series with on my second channel, linked below. Borussia Mönchengladbach. Die Fohlen, under their manager Marco Rose, who joined them this season after a trophy-laden run with RB Salzburg previously, started their season at a sprint. After 7 match days, they found themselves at the top of the table, which they held on to until a 2-1 loss away to VfL Wolfsburg dropped them into the 2nd place position, and they've since dropped to 4th, unfortunately, though it's very tight from 2nd to 4th in the table. When they're on, they're a fun team to watch. Alassane Plea as their striker, with Herman and Thuram on the flanks, either Benesh or Embolo tucked in behind the striker. They've struggled for goals at times despite the talent that I just named, but that could be down to their inexperienced attackers and the loss of Thorgan Hazard. They certainly will be a team to watch next season, but hey, after this break, maybe they'll be able to recapture their form from around October, November. All right, now we're getting to the bona fide title contenders, with all respect, of course, to Mönchengladbach and Leverkusen. First up is RB Leipzig in third place, a team that has been really catching the eyes of the rest of Europe after their solid run in the Champions League so far this season. Under Julian Nagelsmann, they've gone from what was a promising team when Ralf Rangnick was in charge to a team that you could see winning the Bundesliga, if not this season, then in the next few. Timo Werner is playing more consistently and has 21 goals and 7 assists to his name already, while the emergence of Marcel Sabitzer has been incredible to watch. My boy, Sabitzer. Christopher Nkunku left his boyhood club PSG for Leipzig and has been a mainstay for them, racking up 12 assists so far in his first Bundesliga season. On top of that, Dayot Upamecano has become one of the most sought-after center backs in the world of football at just 21 years old. Patrick Schick has looked like a world beater in comparison to his misfiring days at AS Roma, and the same could be said of Angelino, discarded by City, but a constant threat down that left flank for RB Leipzig. I mean, this team has been elevated by Nagelsmann, and they will like their chances at their first Bundesliga title as they close out their season against Freiburg, Mainz, Hertha Berlin, Köln, Paderborn, Hoffenheim, Fortuna Düsseldorf, Borussia Dortmund on the penultimate day, and then Augsburg. They've already played Bayern Munich twice, so their fixtures alone could make them one of the favorites. Speaking of Borussia Dortmund, my oh my, what a squad Lucien Favre has at his disposal, at least in the attack. They're certainly a top-heavy squad, with Erling Haaland, Jadon Sancho, Thorgan Hazard, Julian Brandt, the soon-to-be returning from injury Marco Reus. Achraf Hakimi has been incredible as a roving wingback. Rafael Guerreiro has churned out decent performance after decent performance from midfield, but all of this has been undone on a few occasions by some of the most optional defensive performances. Major lapses and stupid mistakes in the defensive end have cost Dortmund on a few occasions, and while they have been improved in comparison to last season, when you're contending for the league title against a team like Bayern Munich, you can't afford to do things like that. Every single point counts, and as far as Bayern goes, they had a less than impressive start to the season under Niko Kovac, and Borussia Dortmund failed to take advantage of that. At least by their own standards, Bayern looked weak at the beginning of the season. After losing 5-1 away to Eintracht Frankfurt on November 2nd, Kovac was sacked and replaced by Hansi Flick on November 3rd. He's now the permanent manager, by the way. And in his first Bundesliga match, Flick oversaw a massive 4-0 victory over Dortmund. Sure, they had a bobble at the end of November, but since then, they've been near perfection. They've dropped points just once since December 14th, a 0-0 result against Leipzig back in February, as Bayern have won 10 and drawn once since December 14th. Part of this fantastic form has, of course, been attributed to the insane form that Robert Lewandowski himself has been in this season, averaging just over a goal per game in the Bundesliga. But some small changes that Hansi Flick made have bore great fruit, such as the reintegration of Thomas Müller, who has since surged to the top of the Bundesliga assist chart with 16 to his name. Or one of the biggest revelations this season, the Canadian left back Alphonso Davies, another one of my sons, who has been fantastic. Is he a perfect player defensively? No, but he's still just 19 years old. He's still learning the defensive side of the game, and his sheer pace and athleticism allows him to recover from many of the mistakes that he does make. Plus, he adds to their attack going forward, given that he's a former winger. Kimmich has also transitioned well to a defensive midfielder, something that was implemented by Kovac actually, and his partnership alongside Thiago Alcantara has been one of my favorite midfield duos to watch in European football. Well, in football at large. Serge Gnabry has had issues with consistency at times this season, but all things considered, has been fantastic for Bayern. Alaba has transitioned well to a center back, which has allowed Flick to keep Davies and Pavard on the flanks. Coutinho has popped up with a decent performance now and then. Neuer is back to a form resembling some of his best. Boateng has been doing well at center back again. I mean, Bayern are looking strong and a contender for not just the Bundesliga, obviously, but one of the top contenders for the Champions League, in my opinion, if that's even going to finish. So it's hard to see anyone unseating Bayern at the top of the table, but hey, after 2 months of break, as I said before, you can in some cases throw teams' previous forms out the window. Anything could happen, right? Alright guys, I hope this was helpful for all of you newfound Bundesliga fans. Here's hoping there won't be any player-to-player transmission and we can see out the end of the season safely, you know? I'm a little bit nervous, but I thank you for watching. I'm Adrian, I love ya, and take care of yourself. Ciao.